In this episode of Behind the Song, I want to talk about my new single, Truth Comes Sideways. This song became one of the emotional anchors for my upcoming project, Rupture, because it really explores the idea that people rarely say exactly what they mean or feel the first time. Truth doesn't always arrive directly. Sometimes it comes through tension, hesitation, emotion, silence, misunderstanding, and you may have to circle back around to it a few times before you really understand what someone is really trying to say. At its core, the song is about emotional safety. It's about creating space where someone can be honest, even if their words don't come out perfectly. The reoccurring imagery of the open hand throughout the chorus, "I want you to always run towards my hand," became symbolic of trust, healing, and staying present long enough for someone to feel fully seen. I wrote the song alone on February 8th, 2026, during a season where I was doing a lot of relational and emotional reflection. I kept coming back to the thought experiment that truth often comes sideways. Like, people may say something emotionally instead of clearly, or they might not fully understand their own feelings yet. Sometimes we interpret each other wrong. Sometimes we overreact before we understand, but underneath all of that is usually a deeper desire to be understood and accepted. The structure of the song intentionally mirrors that emotional movement. Verse 1 is like very activated emotionally. Push my buttons, light a fire, lead with emotion. Everything feels very reactive, tense, and very circular. Then verse 2 resolves that tension. No pushing buttons, no mixed up lines, no fanning fires in my mind. It's the exact contrast of what verse 1 is really trying to communicate. I almost look at the song as if it's two voices. There's one perspective in verse 1, and then there's another perspective in verse 2. That contrast became the emotional hinge of the song. The movement from activation into steadiness, from emotional noise into emotional safety. Sonically and from the very beginning, I knew I wanted this to live in the 80s influenced pop space with a real live band feel. I wanted groove, I wanted movement. I didn't want the song to feel sleepy or stripped down emotionally.
The truth comes sideways. The truth comes sideways.
Even though the vocal delivery is very conversational and close, a lot of the inspiration came from some of the artists who I like personally or have been listening to lately, such as Olivia Dean. Especially songs like Man I Need, where you hear that warmth, that restraint, and this really human vocal presence sitting on top of the groove. We also pulled inspiration from Casey Musgraves and Phoebe Bridgers for emotional air and space in the production. The song sits at a mid-tempo at about 94 BPM, and Steve Kinney came up with the groove and the instrumentation direction really early in the process. Normally I write almost entirely a cappella, basically to my iPhone voice memo, so there's no production underneath that because it gives flexibility later. But in this case, Steve sent over the groove and it immediately sparked something creatively. At the same time, I realized I needed more time to sit with the arrangement emotionally before going into the studio. I actually emailed Steve and told him I want to make sure the vocal arrangement is fully in line before we walk anything in, particularly around verse 2, and you'll probably see that if you tune into my demo diaries where you can hear the original recording, the long form version of the song for how I originally approached it. But once we locked in on the groove, I really just had to sit and think and almost rearrange, in a sense, rewrite, really work through the song and really made it what it is today. I really love how it came out. I actually emailed Steve and told him I want to make sure the vocal arrangement is fully aligned before we lock anything in. I mean, his response was basically that's 100% what he prefers. The freedom honestly made the song better. I ended up spending a weekend with the groove, and verse 2 ended up being completely rewritten. But once I stopped trying to force the arrangement and really listen to what the song wanted to do or where it wanted to go emotionally with regard to that hinge, everything really started to click and come into place. His response was basically, I love it. Very, very intuitive. All of this really suits your voice really extremely well. That was a huge moment for me creatively because I think that rewrite is where the song really became itself. We recorded the vocals at Clear Track Studios, and honestly, we moved through the tracking process really naturally. I think we got through most of the song in around 2 hours. Working with Stephen Clark as my recording engineer is always great because he's incredibly skilled technically, but he also creates an environment where you can stay emotionally connected to the song and the performance instead of getting pulled into the whole process of it. One of my favorite moments recording the song was actually the outro and the tag sections. The truth comes sideways. That portion really became fun to record because there's so many different vocal parts. It almost started functioning like a bed underneath the arrangement. And then later in the process, we added the lay it downs lines underneath on the outro, and those sections, which weren't really part of the original lyrics, but it was something that I built when I was building out the demo, and I really just spoke to lay it down. That language is often used in faith spaces, but I really felt it was appropriate for this song. I don't know if it's the repetition of Truth Comes Sideways was consciously actually intended to feel hypnotic or mantra-like. Once we layered everything together, it started creating this emotional atmosphere underneath the song. And honestly, the lay it down part ended up being one of my favorite parts of the entire record. The phrase is used a lot in faith spaces when people talk about laying burdens down, but it also fits the song relationally in a really human way. Whatever reaction you're afraid of, whatever's stirring inside you, it's okay. Let it go. Lay it down. I'm still here. Come toward me. That became the emotional resolution of the entire song. We recorded Truth Comes Sideways at Clear Track Studios with an incredible group of musicians helping bring the track to life. Steve also produced, mixed, and mastered the entire record. One of my favorite things about the production is the contrast between the emotional honesty of the lyrics and the movement happening underneath them. There's layered percussion, synth textures, guitars, groove, but the song still leaves more for the listener to sit still emotionally inside the conversation. And honestly, that's what I really hope people take away from it. Sometimes healing isn't about saying things perfectly. I think sometimes people need patience while they learn how to express what's actually happening underneath the surface. If the truth comes in sideways, let it out. Any weight that you're holding, lay it down. That line really became the emotional center of the song for me. I'm incredibly excited for you to hear this one as the lead single for my upcoming project, Rupture. My name is Geryah Dingle. Continue using your talents. We're good.
I want you to always want to hold my hand forever and always.